The best player in the world for exactly 1 year was Wesley Sneijder. For 12 months, he was untouchable, the brain of a historic Inter Milan side, the leader of a Dutch team that went all the way to a World Cup final, and the heartbeat of every big match he played. He outclassed Kaká, dismantled Xavi and Iniesta, and outperformed Messi and Ronaldo on the grandest stage of all. And yet, when the Ballon d'Or podium was announced, his name wasn't even there. It wasn't just a robbery, it was simply football heresy. And in the years that followed, something even worse happened. People stopped talking about him entirely. When we think of the all-time great midfielders, his name barely comes up. When we debate the most dominant individual seasons, 2010 Sneijder somehow gets forgotten. And when people discuss the biggest what-ifs in football history, no one even wonders how far he could have gone, because deep down, we all know the truth. He let it slip away. Unlike Messi or Ronaldo, there was no long reign at the top, no second or third prime, just one perfect year, and then nothing. But before we talk about the downfall, the injuries, the drinking, the missed opportunities, and the weight gain, let's go back to where it all started, because Sneijder was never meant to be a legend. He wasn't a child prodigy. He didn't have scouts whispering his name before he even kicked a ball. In fact, if things had gone just a little differently, he might not have made it at all. Sneijder was born into a football family in Utrecht, Netherlands, in 1984. His father had played semi-professionally, his older brother was already on the path to a football career, and his younger brother Rodney would eventually try to follow in his footsteps. None of that mattered when he first stepped into the Ajax Academy at 7 years old. Ajax had the most ruthless youth system in Dutch football. It wasn't like Barcelona's La Masia, where young talents were nurtured for years. No, at Ajax, you had to prove you belonged. Sneijder had no guarantees. He had no famous last name. He was small, barely stood out physically, and unlike generational talents like Cruyff or Van Basten, he didn't dazzle with flashy footwork. So every single year, he had to fight for his place. Every single year, he had to beat out the next wonder kid Ajax wanted to push through. By the time he was 18, Sneijder was still not the chosen one. He wasn't the future of Dutch football. He wasn't even the future of Ajax. The club had bigger names, more hyped names. Rafael van der Vaart was the true golden boy, already breaking into the first team. Sneijder, he was waiting in the background, training, improving, watching. In 2002, Ajax ran into an injury crisis. They needed someone, anyone, to step up in midfield. So they looked at Sneijder, the kid who had been around for over a decade but never got his shot. That was all he needed. Sneijder didn't just step up, he took over. He bossed the midfield from day one, playing like he had been there for years. His technique was flawless, his passing was effortless, and his football IQ off the charts. He wasn't a physically dominant player. He didn't need to be. He could see passes before they happened. He controlled tempo like a conductor, and when it came time to strike the ball, his right foot was a sniper rifle. It didn't take long before he became undroppable. His breakout moment was not some easy Eredivisie match. No. He had to prove himself on the biggest stage Ajax had, a Champions League quarter-final against AC Milan. Most 18-year-olds would have collapsed under the pressure. Sneijder was built for this. He controlled the midfield against one of the best Italian teams of the decade, and from that moment on, Ajax knew they had something special. By his second season, Sneijder was one of Ajax's most important players. He ran their midfield, dictated play, and delivered in every big moment. From 2003 to 2004, at just 19 years old, Sneijder scored 10 goals, 11 assists, and helped Ajax win the Eredivisie title. He also won the Johan Cruyff Award as the best young player in the Netherlands. The kid who had spent years barely holding on to his place was now Ajax's best midfielder, and then he leveled up again. Between 2006 and 2007, when he turned 22, he scored 22 goals, 10 assists, which was his best goal-scoring season ever. At this point, he was the perfect attacking midfielder. He could score from anywhere, pass from anywhere, and control an entire game on his own. And when you're playing like that, the biggest clubs in the world start watching. Real Madrid was already stockpiling every star midfielder on the market, and when they looked at Sneijder, they saw the missing piece. In the summer of 2007, they made their move. He was heading to the biggest club in the world for 27 million euros, the second most expensive Dutch player in history. And in his first season, he proved he belonged. But that was just the start, because Madrid doesn't let you stay on top for long. Wesley Sneijder walked into Real Madrid as one of the most complete midfielders in Europe, and for a moment, it looked like he was about to take over the world. First match, first goal, a game winner in the Madrid derby against Atletico. It was the perfect start. The Bernabeu fell in love with his vision, his technique, and most importantly, his ability to step up in the biggest moments. And for his first season, he was a La Liga champion, had 9 goals, 9 assists. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't the guy taking all the headlines, but he was the guy who made Madrid tick. And then, for some reason, everything collapsed. In 2009, Real Madrid did what Real Madrid always does. Florentino Perez had just returned as club president, and when Perez takes charge, it means one thing: new superstars. That summer, Madrid went on one of the most insane transfer windows of all time. They got Cristiano Ronaldo for 94 million euros, Kaká for 67 million euros, Karim Benzema for 35 million euros, and Xabi Alonso for 34 million euros. 230 million euros. 4 world-class players, and in the middle of it all, Sneijder became expendable. Now, he was on the bench before pre-season even started. And the worst part, it wasn't just that Madrid pushed him aside, it was that they crushed him in the process. The city, the fame, the money, it swallowed players whole, and Sneijder was one of them. He later admitted it himself. He got addicted to the Madrid nightlife. In his biography, he said, "I was young and enjoyed the success and attention. It must have gone wrong there." Later, no drugs, but alcohol and rock and roll. "I got used to that as one of the stars. You are worshipped as a real player." He would be seen drunk in the streets. He would spend thousands on alcohol every night and skip training or show up in terrible condition. It got so bad that his own teammates tried to stop him. Arjen Robben and Ruud van Nistelrooy constantly warned him. His wife filed for divorce, and while Madrid tried to cover it up, everyone inside the club somehow already knew. The coaches lost patience. The board gave up on him, and when the summer of 2009 came around, Madrid didn't even give him a choice. They let him go. A year earlier, he was supposed to be the future of their midfield. Now, he was Madrid's biggest disappointment. And just like that, he was shipped off to Inter Milan. He went from being a Galactico to being a reject, and when he arrived in Italy, he was broken. His confidence was gone, his fitness destroyed, and his career was hanging by a thread. But then, Jose Mourinho called, and that changed everything. Mourinho didn't ask about Madrid. He didn't ask about the drinking, the nightlife, the wasted potential. He just told him one thing: "You are the player I was missing." And with that, everything changed. Sneijder wasn't just another midfielder at Inter. He became the brain of the entire team. Mourinho gave him total control. Every attack went through him. He dictated the tempo, pulled the strings, and made sure the ball always reached the right place at the right time. And for the first time in his career, Sneijder had a team built around him. Samuel Eto'o and Diego Milito made the runs. Maicon and Zanetti provided the width, while Cambiasso and Thiago Motta cleaned up behind him. All Sneijder had to do was orchestrate. And oh my God, did he orchestrate? By December, he was leading Europe in assists. By March the following year, he was dominating every single big game. And by May, he had led Inter Milan to the most dominant season in Italian football history. Inter hadn't won the Champions League in 45 years, and in 2009-10, they had to go through hell to get there. First, they eliminated Chelsea. Then, in the semi-final, they faced Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, the greatest footballing machine ever built. Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Dani Alves. But Mourinho had Sneijder. In the first leg, Inter beat Barca 3-1. Sneijder scored the equaliser and assisted Milito's goal. The second leg was a masterclass in defensive football. Sneijder played through pain, ran himself into the ground, and Inter survived. They reached the final, where Bayern Munich awaited, and once again, Sneijder delivered. First goal would see Sneijder assist Diego Milito with a perfect through ball. The second goal, Milito seals it, and Sneijder runs the show for 90 minutes. Finally, Inter Milan were the champions of Europe, and Wesley Sneijder was man of the hour. He wasn't just a passenger, he was the conductor of the greatest Inter team of all time. And the crazy part? He wasn't done yet. A month later, Sneijder put on the Oranje jersey and did it all over again. In South Africa, he played with a different different level of confidence. He had just conquered Europe with Inter, and now he had a whole country behind him. And when the tournament began, Sneijder played like a man possessed. During the group stage, he scored a long-range rocket against Japan. In the round of 16, he was the man of the match against Slovakia. In the quarterfinals, Netherlands destroyed Brazil, scored twice to knock out the tournament favourites. They breezed through the semi-finals against Uruguay, and just like that, Netherlands reached their first World Cup final since 1978. By the end of the tournament, Sneijder had scored 5 goals and was the joint top scorer, won 4 Man of the Match awards, and carried his country to a World Cup final. But even after losing the final, Sneijder was still expected to win the Ballon d'Or, because at this point he was Champions League winner, treble winner, Serie A champion, Coppa Italia winner, Champions League top assister, World Cup finalist, and World Cup top scorer. It wasn't even up for debate. He had outplayed Xavi and Iniesta. He had outperformed Messi and Ronaldo on the biggest stage. But when FIFA announced the Ballon d'Or rankings, Sneijder was in 4th place. Messi won it, and Iniesta finished 2nd. Xavi finished 3rd. Sneijder, who had dominated club and international football for 12 months, wasn't even on the podium. And just like that, the greatest year of Wesley Sneijder's life was over. To this day, it remains one of the most controversial Ballon d'Or decisions ever. It broke him because after that season, Wesley Sneijder was never the same again. At the start of the 2010-11 season, Sneijder was still playing at a world-class level, but something felt different. The hunger, the intensity, the drive that had made him unplayable just months earlier. It wasn't quite the same. Injuries began creeping in. Small knocks, minor muscle problems, a hamstring strain here, a calf issue there. He was still the best player on the pitch when he played, but those appearances became less frequent. His numbers dipped. Only 4 goals in Serie A, just 7 assists. For most midfielders, that would be respectable. For Sneijder, that was the first real sign of a drop-off. But the biggest change wasn't physical, it was mental. After that magical 2010, he had nothing left to prove. He had achieved everything he ever wanted: Champions League, Serie A, Coppa Italia, a World Cup final. But unlike Messi or Ronaldo, who thrived on staying at the top, Sneijder didn't have that same obsession. He had always been a genius on the pitch, but he had never been the most disciplined athlete. He never had Ronaldo's meticulous diet, Messi's relentless training, or Zlatan's insane self-belief. He had relied on pure talent. And now, that talent was being matched by a body that was beginning to slow down. Sneijder also thrived under Jose Mourinho. The Portuguese manager knew exactly how to get the best out of him. Total freedom, total control, total belief. But after the 2010 treble, Mourinho left for Real Madrid. Inter tried to replace him with Rafael Benitez, but Benitez didn't trust Sneijder the same way. He wanted structure, defensive commitment, a system that prioritized balance over individual brilliance. In that world, Sneijder wasn't a genius. He was a luxury. The team began to fall apart. Milito struggled with injuries. Eto'o left, and Inter Milan, who had conquered Europe just a year earlier, collapsed. They finished 6th in Serie A, their worst season in years. And Sneijder became frustrated. He still had moments of brilliance, still pulled off passes that only he could see, but he was no longer running games like he used to. His influence was fading. By 2012, Sneijder's off-field habits started catching up to him. The drinking, the partying, the lack of discipline, everything he had struggled with in Madrid came back. He started missing games, not because of serious injuries, but because of small fitness issues, strains, fatigue. He was still only 28 years old, but his body was beginning to show signs of a player in decline. Then in 2013, Inter Milan decided they had seen enough. The club had moved on. Sneijder was still a superstar, but his wages were high, his form was inconsistent, and his commitment was questionable. And so, just 3 years after leading them to the greatest season in their history, Inter forced him out. Where do world-class players go when they are no longer wanted at Europe's biggest clubs?
For my new club here, Galatasaray, so I'm ready to play.
Turkey. Sneijder was sold to Galatasaray for just 7.5 million euros. It was over. He had gone from the best player in the world in 2010 to leaving European football's elite at just 28 years old. And unlike Ronaldo, Messi or Ibrahimovic, he never came back. By 31, he was forgotten. By 34, he was out of football. That's the difference between great players and football gods. Messi and Ronaldo sacrificed everything to stay on top. Sneijder, he'd already reached the mountaintop and decided he was happy staying there for just 1 year. And maybe that's okay. Maybe not every player needs to be an obsessive machine. Maybe some players are just meant to shine brilliantly, burn brightly, and fade away just as fast. But when you think of the all-time greats, when you remember the players who truly changed football, you don't think of Wesley Sneijder. And that's the real loss, because for a brief moment, he was one of them. He was untouchable. He was undeniable. He was him. What do you think Sneijder should have done? Could he win the Ballon d'Or if he continued to play like he did in 2010? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It would mean the world to me.